It was a bright Sunday morning at the Louvre Museum in Paris. Tourists were walking, taking pictures, and enjoying the art. Suddenly, a black van pulled up, and 4 people dressed in black climbed ladders to a second-floor window. In just 7 minutes, they took crowns, necklaces, and tiaras worth over $100 million. Guards were shocked, alarms were blaring, and the thieves disappeared into the streets like ghosts. One crown was dropped on the floor, the only clue left behind. Nobody knew who they were or how they could vanish so fast, leaving the whole city in disbelief. Hit subscribe and stay tuned. The truth behind this heist is darker than it first appears. It was a bright Sunday morning in Paris. The Louvre Museum was full of people from all over the world. They were taking pictures, smiling, and admiring the famous art. The air felt calm and peaceful, but no one knew that something shocking was about to happen. Outside the museum, a black van stopped suddenly. 4 people dressed all in black stepped out. They moved quickly, quietly, and with purpose. They carried ladders and strange tools, like they had practiced this moment many times before. Inside the museum, guards walked around as usual. Nothing seemed out of place. But just a few floors above, the intruders were already climbing the walls with their electric ladders. They slipped through a window and entered the Apollo Gallery, the room filled with crowns, jewels, and royal treasures. With quiet, careful moves, they broke open the glass cases. The sound of glass cracking mixed with the soft hum of their power tools. In only 7 minutes, the display cases were empty. Crowns, necklaces, and tiaras worth over $100 million were gone. By the time the alarm went off, it was already too late. The thieves were gone. They rushed down, carrying their bags of stolen jewels, and disappeared into the streets of Paris. A single crown was left behind, dropped in their hurry to escape. Police arrived within minutes, but the robbers had vanished like smoke. The cameras caught only shadows, no clear faces, no names, no clues. News spread fast. Paris was in shock. Reporters crowded the museum gates, asking how the most famous museum in the world could be robbed in broad daylight. Experts said the stolen jewels were priceless, not just for their money, but for their history. Everyone wanted answers, but the thieves were already gone, hiding somewhere in the city. All that remained were broken glass, a dropped crown, and the question that would haunt Paris for weeks. How did they pull it off? By nightfall, the city was covered in flashing blue lights and sirens. Police officers sealed off the Louvre, while investigators studied the shattered glass and scattered debris. The air smelled of dust and metal. Crowds gathered outside the museum gates, whispering in disbelief. Some people recorded the scene on their phones, while others stood silently, too stunned to speak. The Louvre, a place of art, beauty, and history, had suddenly become a crime scene. Inside, detectives moved from case to case, taking photos and collecting evidence. The dropped crown lay on the marble floor, its gold surface reflecting the flashing lights from the hallway. It had once belonged to Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III. Now, it was the only clue left behind. The thieves had taken everything else, 7 pieces of priceless royal jewelry, gone in a matter of minutes. As investigators reviewed the security footage, something strange appeared. The cameras showed the thieves climbing, moving fast, but always just out of clear view. It was as if they knew every blind spot in the museum's system. Someone on the inside might have helped them, or they had studied the Louvre so carefully that they knew it better than the guards themselves. The thought chilled everyone in the room. Across Paris, the story was everywhere. News channels called it the most daring daylight robbery in French history. Talk shows debated whether the jewels would ever be found. People on social media posted theories, some claiming it was an inside job, others saying it was a professional art ring from another country. Every hour that passed without an arrest made the mystery grow deeper. But behind the scenes, a quiet panic spread through the museum's security teams and French police. They knew that every minute mattered. Experts warned that if the jewels weren't found within 2 days, they might be melted down or smuggled out of Europe forever. The clock was ticking, and the ghosts of Paris, the masked thieves who vanished into the daylight, were nowhere to be found. The next morning, Paris felt different. The usual sound of traffic and chatter was replaced with whispers about the heist. News vans parked along the streets near the Louvre, and the city's heartbeat seemed slower, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. Inside the Paris police headquarters, detectives gathered around a dimly lit table covered with maps, photos, and security footage. They replayed the same clip again and again. Four masked figures climbing into the museum, vanishing into the shadows, and then the alarms blaring seconds later. But that morning, they had something new. A piece of torn black fabric had been found near the museum's side gate, stuck to the fence. It looked small, unimportant, until they realized it matched the uniform worn by the thieves. A single thread that could unravel everything. DNA tests were sent to the lab, but the results would take time. And in a city this big, time was the one thing they didn't have. Outside, the search spread across Paris. Dozens of officers scanned hours of street camera footage, tracing the black van that had been spotted leaving the museum area. It weaved through narrow streets, crossed the Pont Neuf bridge, and then vanished into morning fog near the River Seine. The van had no license plates, no signal, nothing to follow. But one camera, an old, half-broken street cam, captured a moment the others missed. Two of the thieves switched bags with a man on a motorbike waiting by the river. The exchange took just 3 seconds. Then both vehicles disappeared in opposite directions. The room went silent when the clip ended. This wasn't random. It was planned to perfection. The timing, the backup vehicles, even the window they chose to break, everything had been studied. Someone had fed them inside information. Someone who knew the Louvre's every corner. Detective Morel, the lead investigator, leaned back in his chair, eyes sharp with frustration. They knew our blind spots, he said quietly. They knew how long it takes before the system locks down. That's not something you find online. That's someone from inside. The Louvre's security chief was called in for questioning. He denied everything, but there was fear in his voice. The police were starting to realize the truth. This heist wasn't pulled off by amateurs. It was an operation, carefully rehearsed, coldly executed. Later that evening, officers raided an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city, one that had been rented under a fake name 2 weeks before the robbery. The doors creaked open, and the air inside was thick with the smell of oil and dust. Empty boxes lay scattered on the floor. There were footprints, fresh ones, leading to the back exit. The thieves had been there, and they had left only hours before the police arrived. One officer noticed something small under a broken table, a single torn piece of plastic, the kind used for wrapping expensive items. It was printed with a museum inventory number, a match to one of the stolen crowns. The team froze. They were close, closer than anyone thought. But as they stepped back outside, the night air turned colder. Somewhere in the city, those same thieves were watching the news, smiling quietly in the dark. Because the police weren't chasing them anymore, they were chasing ghosts. For 4 long days, the city of Paris stayed on edge. The Louvre remained closed, the public restless, and the police desperate for a lead. Then, on the 5th night, something finally broke the silence. A jeweler from the Montmartre district called the authorities after a man walked into his shop carrying a velvet pouch. Inside was a sapphire brooch, identical to one of the missing pieces. The man claimed it was a family heirloom, but his hands trembled as he spoke. Within minutes, the shop was surrounded. The man tried to run, but officers caught him at the corner of Rue Lepic. He wasn't one of the 4 thieves seen on camera. His name was Luc Dervaux, a small-time smuggler known for working the Paris black market. Under interrogation, he broke fast. He said he had been paid to move the brooch to a contact in Belgium, but he never met the thieves directly. His contact only went by one name, Roche. Detectives dug deeper. The name Roche appeared in past records tied to high-end art smuggling in Europe, a ghost who had never been caught. He specialized in moving priceless items across borders within days, before anyone realized they were gone. If Roche was involved, this was no simple robbery. It was a network, clean, efficient, and far-reaching. Detective Morel's team traced a burner phone found on Luc. It contained a single number, disconnected minutes after the arrest, and one encrypted text message, delivery confirmed. Move by morning. It was proof that the jewels hadn't yet left France. They were still somewhere in Paris. The chase reignited, and every street, every warehouse, every shipping dock became a target. That night, an undercover unit staked out an old courier depot near the outskirts of the city, a quiet place where trucks loaded parcels bound for Belgium. At 2:43 a.m., a gray van arrived. 2 figures stepped out, both wearing caps pulled low. They carried a sealed crate marked antique glassware. The officers waited until the men placed the crate in the truck, then moved in. But as they did, the van's headlights flared, and another car, black, unmarked, roared out of nowhere, cutting the road between the officers and the suspects. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Tires screeched. Shots weren't fired, but metal clashed as one of the thieves rammed a police car, forcing them to fall back. By the time backup arrived, the crate was gone. Inside the abandoned truck, investigators found only packing material and a single card, taped neatly to the floor. On it were 3 words, handwritten in French. "We were never here." Back at headquarters, Detective Morel stared at the note for a long time. This wasn't just arrogance. It was a message, a taunt. Whoever these people were, they were playing a different game entirely. Meanwhile, across the city, inside a dimly lit apartment overlooking the Seine, a man placed a phone on the table beside a box wrapped in brown paper. The faint glimmer of gold reflected under the light. The man smiled slightly, then dialed a number on a satellite phone. "Phase 1 complete," he said quietly. "The world believes they're gone." The line went dead. The man closed the box, lifted it carefully, and disappeared into the Paris night, leaving behind nothing but silence and the hum of the city that still had no idea it was being watched. Days turned into weeks, and Paris still had no answers. The police had suspects, fragments of clues, and a trail that led nowhere. Then, one quiet evening, an anonymous envelope arrived at the Paris police headquarters. Inside was a flash drive and a short note that read, "You're looking in the wrong direction." When the detectives played the footage, the room fell silent. It was high-definition security footage from inside the Louvre, but not from the day of the robbery. The timestamp was from 3 weeks before the heist. It showed a man in a gray maintenance uniform walking through the museum after hours, disabling cameras one by one. He moved with precision, scanning hallways, measuring time between guard patrols. The face was clear. He wasn't one of the masked thieves. He was a Louvre employee, a senior systems technician named Arnaud Keller. When they raided his apartment, it was empty. His clothes, his laptop, even his passport, gone. But on his table, they found a small notebook with only one thing written inside. "Perfection leaves no fingerprints." Interpol joined the hunt. Keller had vanished, likely using false documents to leave France. Traces of money transfers led to a shell company in Dubai, then to another in Hong Kong. The path ended there. But investigators now believed he wasn't just part of the robbery. He was the architect behind it. The man who planned every move, every blind spot, every escape route. The thieves were his hands, but the mind behind the operation was his alone. Months later, reports surfaced that fragments of the stolen jewels were being sold in private collections across Europe and Asia. Melted, recut, impossible to trace. The Louvre officially declared the stolen pieces irrecoverable. Paris moved on, the headlines faded, and tourists returned to the museum's halls. But deep inside the Apollo Gallery, one glass display remained empty, untouched, forever waiting for the treasures that would never come home. And somewhere far away, on a private island in the Mediterranean, a man in a linen shirt watched the sunset. On his wrist glimmered a sapphire, the same one taken from the brooch found in Montmartre. He raised a glass of wine, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Art belongs to those who understand its value." The Paris daylight heist remains one of the boldest and most mysterious robberies in modern history. The jewels, worth over $102 million, were never recovered, and the mastermind, Arnaud Keller, was never found. Some believe he lives quietly under a new identity. Others say he's planning something even bigger. If you think this story was intense, just wait until you hear what happened in the next one. Subscribe, like, and share this video, not just to support the channel, but to make sure you never miss the truth behind the world's most unbelievable crimes. Because in stories like this, the truth always hides in plain sight.